Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Live It Up, the show where we explore and discuss how to take your life to that next level and beyond. We cover health, wealth, relationships, and how to create a life you absolutely love. I'm your host and coach, Fletcher. Amy is out, but we'll be back next week. So today, we're going to be spending time with an outstanding individual who has made a huge positive impact for a lot of the youth in our valley. I'd go as far as to say that he is a downright blessing to our community. He's someone I admire, respect, and so I want you to know him too, if you don't already, because you may very well. Stick around after the commercial break as we talk with Barry DaPoli, the superintendent of Chelan School District. We're not going to be talking so much about school issues as we are about what makes this guy tick, what's behind his success and achievement. But before we get to that, I want to remind you that if you have questions that you would like us to answer on or off the air, you can email them directly to me at fletcher@fletcherellingson.com. Now, let's get to today's email. It says, Fletcher, I am a terrible decision maker. It takes me so long to make decisions, it stresses me out, and my husband even teases me that I have a disorder. But really, I don't like to make them. I find myself having to research my options until I wish I didn't even have the option to make the decision in the first place. I even struggled about whether or not I should write this email and then worried about it after I sent it. I don't want to be like this, but I am and don't know what to do about it. Do you have any suggestions? Thanks, signed RJ. All right, RJ, thanks for the email. I say this every show, but I really want you to hear this. Reaching out and asking for help is a sign of strength. Strong people ask for help, and that's you. So, I get that you're experiencing challenges when it comes to decision making, and it sounds like it's frustrating and burdensome. So I'm going to offer a suggestion, and I invite you to really consider it. My hunch is that you're worried about making a wrong decision, and I suspect you think that there is a right or a wrong decision to be made. I also suspect that if you think that if you make a wrong decision that something bad will happen, such as you might disappoint someone, or you might feel like you're going to be in trouble, or that you're not perfect. And if any of those are accurate, then I want you to ask yourself the following. Why are you afraid of disappointing someone or not being perfect? And keep asking yourself these types of why questions, because you're going to get some really cool insights as to why you do what you do. I also invite you to consider this. What if there are no good, bad, right, or wrong decisions? And what if the perfect way of being is to simply be open to the lessons of the decisions you make? What if you could look at the decisions as a gift, right? Because they are a gift for you to learn your lessons, to notice what works and to notice what doesn't work, what serves or doesn't serve. Maybe making decisions is the very thing that's going to help you grow. So, I got a question for you. Will you make a decision that will help you grow and feel more confident and become empowered at decision making? RJ, I believe you can become a master decision maker. Sure, it'll take practice, but all important things do, right? Practice, practice, practice. Repetition is the mother of skill. And you've thrown out the labels of right, and when you've thrown out the labels of right and wrong and good or bad, you can experience a freedom around the process of decision making. You're going to make an educated decision, but then you're going to commit to being open to the lessons that ensue. You look for what works and what doesn't work. And all the times that don't work, or don't serve you, well, those are just to help you clarify or refine things for the next time. Look, if it feels uncomfortable to practice this, then you know you're on the right track, okay? We've got to get out of our comfort zone. That's where the magic happens. It might even be downright fearful, but just know that the gift of fear is courage. The only time a person can be courageous is in the face of fear. That's when courage shows up. You've likely heard that quote which says, courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the decision that something is more important than my fear. I'll say that again because, RJ, we're tying this all together now. We're coming full circle. Courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the decision that something is more important than the fear. RJ, thanks again for the email. You've got this. And I believe in you. All right, guys, stick around because after the break, we're talking with Mr. Barry DaPoli. Hey everybody, welcome back to Live It Up. We are here with Mr. Barry DaPoli. He's the superintendent at the Chelan Schools District. And we're gonna visit with him. I wanna find out what makes this guy tick. Like I said, I like to model successful people, and so what better way to model them by sitting down with them and finding out how they got where they're at. So welcome to the show, Barry.
Thanks. Looking forward to the conversation, Fletcher.
Yeah. So you've been superintendent for a few years now, and before that you were principal at the Chelan High School.
Right.
Can you give us like a nutshell version? How did you get into education and where you're at now?
Yeah, so I started young in my career. I was influenced by probably some teachers I had and coaches, and was excited to get into the profession. So went to school on actually a tennis scholarship to Cheney. So grew up in British Columbia. Made that trip to Cheney. Actually, it was a good. I not only got my degree, but met my wife there. So that worked out well. Went back to the homeland and taught for a while. Taught a number of different things: science, math, some physical education, and also did some counseling. And then went back to school and did a degree in exercise physiology. Actually, was looking at getting into wellness and corporate fitness. My wife was a dietitian.
Really?
And then just had an opportunity, was approached by my superintendent and asked me if I would be interested in a leadership institute. And that was transforming, and that's when I realized that I wanted to get into school leadership and make a bigger influence, have a bigger influence on the system and students. So worked for a bit as a vice principal in a small community in Kimberly, which is north of Coeur d'Alene. And then, Fletcher, it took a turn. My wife was excited to come back to the U.S., and we bought a motel, which is wasn't in my career path at all. And so we bought the Parkway, which was across from Don Morris Park in Chelan. And
I did not know that.
We did about 10 years of the Parkway. After 5, the passion for education was stronger than ever. I can remember the first day of school without me being at a school in likely 15 years, and I was renovating a bathroom, and true story, I had tears in my eyes when the buses went by. So I knew then I needed to get back into education, working with students, and that led to an opportunity in Wenatchee, actually, where I was hired by the Private Industry Council to do some work experience in the summer, and then teach the GED program, and learned a lot about education in that, learned a lot from the kids I taught, high at-risk kids. And then an opportunity came up in Chelan for a middle school principalship. Was successful in getting that. Did a couple, probably about 5 years at the middle level, and then moved into the high school and middle school, running both those schools at the same time. That's where I lost my hair. And then the last 10 years of that stint was at the high school. Worked with some great people. Then had the opportunity, was approached by the board to interview for the superintendency, which really wasn't in my sight at that point, but like the challenge of a much bigger lens and looking at the whole district, being in the community for almost 20 years, I felt like it was a really great opportunity. So this is now just finishing my 3rd year as a superintendent. So that's the nutshell.
That sounds like enough experience for multiple lives. Wow.
Well, actually, the motel, the business experience, not having taken a business class, and it was a small motel, so not only running it with my wife, but also you're the maintenance guy, you're the accountant, you do it all, but the customer service part was good for me. I'm a servant at heart, so enjoyed that, enjoyed meeting a lot of interesting people, but was certainly ready to get back into education again and working with kids.
Yeah. Running your own business, all sorts of lessons, right?
Absolutely.
A heck of an education.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it helped me be a better educator, being that I was in the middle of running a business in a small community, and that just gives you lots of insights into how to help kids.
Yeah, for sure. Well, tell me, what are you passionate about when it comes to getting up and going to work?
Yeah, I think what really drives me, Fletcher, is just the idea of equity. And that's the challenge of our time, the challenge of our nation, the challenge of our state. All schools have that challenge. How do we help kids who are underprivileged, in poverty, rise up and take advantage of opportunity. And education, as we all know, is the great equalizer. So that really is what drives me in improving the life chances of our students. So I look at school as, it's almost like a resort. You get to try all these sports, clubs. It's all about learning from different really talented instructors. And at the end, we want to make sure all those kids have the opportunity to maximize their potential as they enter the workforce or college. So those things really drive me. I think it's maximizing potential of students and really creating life chances for them to help them either lift themselves up from poverty or just reach their potential as a human being.
Yeah, I love that, helping them maximize their potential.
Right.
And I like also the analogy of it being somewhat like a resort where you get to try all these different things.
Yeah.
I mean, and they really do, there are so many things that they can get involved with
There really
these days.
is.
So.
There really is, especially in our schools today.
Yeah. So the buck stops with you, right? We were talking about decision making earlier, and there's got to be a lot of demands in your line of work. So what do you do to like decompress, and what re-energizes you?
I think that's such a great question. Looking back, one of the things that I try to do with our administrators is always ask them, where are you at with your self-care? So I'll do check-ins with all my administrators on a quarterly basis, and that's the first question I ask Fletcher is where are you with that REN factor, rest, exercise, and nutrition? I think those are really the pillars of, staying in tune with yourself and really maintaining balance. I think that's so important in our life. You look at nature, and when nature's out of balance, there's a hurricane or a wave or something, and I think our lives are very similar to that. So the challenge for me is always finding that balance, and I think sometimes rest is really underestimated, and that's really a strong part of being balanced. And so try to get ample rest, and the other side of that is exercise. So if you don't create that energy reserve, you lose your enthusiasm, you lose your drive, you just don't have that bounce in your steps. So I work hard at that. Used to run a lot, now I've had to look at different ways of exercising. You've got some knee issues as I age, so more elliptical. I like to road bike, so lots of cycling and doing more walking and hiking. And then the nutrition part comes easy for me. My wife's a former dietitian, so I'm well aware of how to look after that. Got some work to do on the exercise. Typically when you get really busy, that's the first thing you shove out. And as you well know, that's not something you can give up. So I think that whole idea of balancing your life with rest, exercise, and nutrition is really critical for anyone, and including our students.
Excellent. Well, I like that answer. Before we go to commercial break, I'm going to ask one more question. What was something in your life about which you thought you had always been right, and then realized one day you were flat out wrong?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And Fletcher, nothing really stands out in my mind, because as I look at making decisions and making those shifts, it's a constant study of looking at things and always looking at two perspectives. So I can't find something that really stands out, but I would say that anytime you shift your thinking, it results in you becoming more energized, better about it, but also that the part of studying, as you navigate through decision making is important. But I can't find something that really has totally, shifted my thinking one way. I think, as life comes at us, no matter who you are, what job you're in, you're always looking at shifting and looking at different ideas. And I think respecting others' opinions to help you frame and navigate where you're going. That's how I answer that question.
I like that. Good. I had kind of an aha moment myself. It was this year about. I realized that all my life I had thought that people think like me. Now I look at other people and they're getting different results. But I had always thought, well, of course they wouldn't buy that, or of course they wouldn't do that, or of course they will do that or buy that or think this, because people think like me. And it just dawned on me, like just in real simple terms, like, oh wait, people don't think like me, and it allowed me to really shift how I interact with people and the questions that I can ask. But there was an example of where I was just like flat out wrong.
That's such a great point, because I think in leadership, as you meet in groups and committees and departments, like thinking's never really that great a thing. You want
Yes.
divergent thinking so that you can be challenged by it. And I think that's what good leaders would do, is they listen to different sides and listen to that divergent thought, because sometimes that can really precipitate a new idea and
Yeah.
a new system change. So I think you make a great point.
Yeah, cool. Hey, we're going to take a short break, but we're going to be back with more with Mr. DaPoli right after this commercial. Hey everybody, we're back. Welcome back to Live It Up. We're here with Mr. DaPoli, and we are talking about what makes him tick. What's his success story? And so you seem like a very positive person. You know, all of my interactions with you have been very positive. The kids love you because you're positive and you're a good listener. What do you attribute your positivity to?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, I look at my father, and he was an Italian immigrant who was really hardworking but always encouraging. Had some opportunities to play for some really good coaches as an athlete in both hockey and as a tennis player myself. So I think it's who you surround yourself with. And I like to look at the world as there's so much hope in humanity. You see the great stories that happen anywhere in your community, and in particular Chelan because I live there, but I just see so many success stories from students who have overcome great adversity. And I think it's that hope. It's the way you look at the next day. You have that choice. It's your attitude. It's up to you. Mm-hmm. And I choose to err on the side of hope rather than despair. I think you live your life like that, Fletcher. I mean, it's much easier to smile in the morning and get up and have a bounce in your step and look at, you really can make an influence in the lives of kids and who you work with. And I look at leadership really as it's kind of those three I's. It's the impact you can have on people, it's your influence, and you have the ability to inspire them. So I always say to staff, and whether you're a custodian or you're a teacher, every time you have an interaction with a student or a parent, that's an opportunity to influence another life. So Absolutely. If you look at it that way, you're lifting everybody up. So That's kind of where I want to be. I want to be lifting people up because, it's really up to us to influence those students, and life really is great.
Yeah.
It's how you approach it.
I love it. Yeah, as I think back to some of the instructors that made the biggest impact on me, I certainly learned content in the courses, but it was beyond that. I felt inspired by who they were.
Sure.
And felt that they were elevating me.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So can you briefly share with us one thing that you see working well in the schools and something else that is a challenge still?
Yeah, for sure. One thing I'm really proud of, there's a lot of great things happening in our school system, but particularly at Chelan High School, we have a mentoring program that was built over time. And it kind of came out of this quote at a book I'll share later with you, Fletcher, but the quote was, "The problem is the problem. The problem is not the student." And so we started looking at, how do we impact these students? We have a finite number of resources, and I thought, we have all these great students in our school. Mm-hmm. Why don't we use our students to mentor? So we bring in these 8th graders who have been challenged by grades, and we take seniors and juniors and we train them with a RITRI national curriculum, and they work hand in hand with these young students, and the results are amazing.
Cool.
I mean, I think the Principals Association did a story on, Chelan High School from F's to A's in the honor roll. So a lot of these kids have been transformed by a student mentor.
Wow.
And that's really grown to now we use adult mentors through Thrive, and you're familiar with Thrive as a nonprofit in Chelan. We have a grandfathers program where we get elders who go into the grade school and work with our elementary kids. Our CSI students now are going over and working with our elementary kids. So it's using the resources you have to lift up the building, and our kids are incredible. So
Nice.
you take some of those high-performing students, and they'll tell you, Fletcher, that even above some of the classes they take, they've learned more from being a mentor and influencing someone's life and having gratitude and understanding for that person. So, those soft skills that are hard to teach, you learn them as a mentor. So that's been something that's really lifted up our buildings and our schools. Probably the biggest challenge, Fletcher, and this is speaking to the work you do, is mental illness. Mm-hmm. We just finished a workshop yesterday. We involved a number of community practitioners from our hospital and different psychologists. And we really feel like we need to be better connected with agencies to help our students and the challenges they have with mental illness. So we are revamping our mission and beliefs for our counseling department, and we're going to really focus on a K-12 integrated, aligned program to assist kids with high trauma and mental illness, because it's something we deal with on a daily basis, and we want to maximize the talent we have in our schools to help those kids. So that's caused us to really look at the whole mental illness aspect.
Wow, that's impressive.
It's a lot of work to do there, but we have some great people we're working with. So I'm excited about continuing that work forward.
Oh, that's so cool. So you didn't get here by accident. Are you a goal setter?
You know, absolutely. I think you really do have to set goals. I mean, even daily goals, whether it's diet, fitness, you know, in order to get results, Fletcher, and you know this better than anyone, you got to have goals to get results. So I'm always asking my leaders, you know, what is it about leadership that you're doing to influence the building? How are you why is the building better because of your leadership? And we have to see results. So in order to get those results, we've got to have some goals that are focused and aligned with the system work we do in the organization. So goals are absolutely critical.
Excellent. Yeah. I see you brought a book because you knew I was going to ask you. What are a couple books that have influenced you?
Yeah, and I would love to do more reading. It's when the job's on, it's on. So I do a lot of article reading, but I do love to read. I've read a lot of books, particularly in leadership. So probably my favorite author is John Maxwell. He's written I don't know how many books, but I liked the 21 Laws of Refutable Leadership. That was a book that I really enjoyed. Brene Brown is a new author doing a lot of work on leadership and vulnerability.
Huge fan.
Probably, you know, you're probably familiar with her book on Braving the Wilderness. So that's a great read. But this book here, Fletcher, I brought it because it's had such an impact on me. Probably written 10 years ago by a guy named Sir John Jones, and it's The Magic Weaving Business, which sounds like a crazy title, but it's all about finding the heart of teaching and learning. And I would recommend this book to anyone who's a mentor, a parent, a teacher, a principal. It just has so many life lessons in it and great stories about education, teaching, and learning, and it's fabulous. So probably my favorite read, and I'm going to get back and read it again. I try to read it each summer because you just see new things in books as you read through them, but this is just a gem.
Cool, excellent. Thanks for sharing that. I wrote it down. We have just another minute and a half. Real quick, if there was one thing that parents should be doing with their kids, what would it be? Yeah,
and I love this question, Fletcher, because being a parent and then being a principal, you have a lot of conversations, interactions with students. So I'm going to say two things.
All right.
The first thing I think is listening. And listening is such an important skill for not just a leader or a principal, but especially a parent. And listening to understand is different than listening to respond. So always we want to give advice. But when you listen with your heart and let that play out, most times you don't have to give that advice. So I would say listening to understand, one, and that's something we have to practice. And I listened to your opener, and it was all about repetitive and practice. So listening is about practice. But secondly, you know, anytime you deal with discipline, and as a principal, you know, a lot of discipline comes across your desk, I would say that, you know, you never want to impart consequences or discipline when your heart is not at peace.
Got it.
So if you're in a place where you're angry and you're trying to deliver a consequence to your young son or daughter, you want to take a break, and you really have to examine the conscience of your heart. And when you're in a better state, calmer, that's probably the time to have that conversation. So those are two things I learned really quickly in my life as a dad, but also as a principal, and they've served me really well. And students appreciate that. When you don't violate that respect and you hold their self-worth and dignity, you're in a much better place to go further. So that's a great question.
That's some sound advice.
Yeah, that's something that I live that every day, and the listening part is especially critical.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, that is about all the time we have. It goes quick, but I really appreciate you making the trip down here and sharing your story with us.
Great to have the conversation, Fletcher. Thanks for the invitation and the great work you do in our community.
Absolutely. All right, and now it's time for you to get out there. It's time to be a source of kindness, be a source of contribution. You have something to offer this world, and I believe in you.